Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm parent coach, mother of four, and your host, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where you will learn that even for parenting experts like me, there is no such thing as a perfect parent, and that fabulous behavior and amazing relationships are right on the other side of that realization. If you're working your butt off to do right by your kid, honor yourself, and go beyond the BS around you, you are my person, and this podcast is for you. Full disclosure, I'm a sometimes potty talker, and we deal with the challenge of raising kids here. This podcast is for grown-ups, so stick your earbuds in and let's do this. Welcome into another episode of the podcast. I'm going to start my Confessions of a Parent Coach podcast with a mini confession. That's not even the confession that I planned for you, but I'm still going to give you you're getting a twofer today. But my mini confession for you is, the topic that I chose for today it's something that I'm like messing around with. I don't necessarily know that I have like a really pretty answer for you or tied it up in a bow to say, and therefore, blah. I don't know. But I have learned from past experience that sometimes when I just kind of let myself muse about things and put these sort of unanswerable questions out into the universe, it sort of finds its way back to me and it's helpful for everybody else. And I'm not the only one who's pondering these things. So that's what we're going with today. This is an ongoing quandary of Anne's that we're going to be exploring. And the whole reason why this quandary has reemerged for me, as it does this time every year, is because in May is when I really start talking about the retreat that I do in October every year. May is when people tend to sign up. Usually by the end of June, things are pretty full. There's always some stragglers that come and join in by the time October rolls around. But May is when I'm really putting my thinking cap on who do I want to invite and how do I want to talk about it and what do people need to hear in order to really understand and connect with the idea of the retreat and know that it's for them and feel ready and comfortable and excited to do this really amazing experience that for a lot of people that come on my retreat, it's the first and only time they've ever done a retreat before. It feels a little bit outside their comfort zone and everything. And so when I'm thinking about all of this stuff, how do I help people sort of take that leap? How do I help people get the answers to the questions that they have and hear what they need to hear to know that it's right for them? This is when I start wondering and musing about what's going on inside of our brains when it comes to decision making, myself included. And so y'all have heard me talk a little bit about my amazing new assistant, Nisha. Hi, Nisha. She's probably listening to this recording right now and editing it for us and making it all into a nice, yummy podcast episode so it can come straight into our ears. So we're all grateful to Nisha. We had this whole conversation this week about exactly what I'm talking about. How do I share and disseminate information about the retreat and what have I done in the past that has really helped people and how can I be even better this year and all of that stuff. And we started talking about this idea of like why people sometimes feel like no problem saying yes to like going on a girls trip or they have their annual, friends thing that they do every year or something, but something like a retreat for some reason feels like this big leap. And I started thinking about parallels in my own life and things that we do and like just how we really aren't super rational or logical when we make decisions. Like we really aren't really looking at things like, pros and cons list when we make decisions, and when it comes to something like this, it doesn't have to be about the decision to come on a retreat, but I feel like that's a really interesting example. It's like we all know anyone out there who's ever gone on a friend's trip, a guy's trip, a girl's trip, or whatever, we know that there's something valuable about that. It's really important. I know so many people who they have like their annual guys trip. My brother-in-law goes on an annual guys trip every year. They go somewhere different. It's the same like core group of guys, and it really matters to him. Like every time I see him, we talk about something that he did on a guy's trip. Like he's gotten amazing memories from it. I really think it feeds his soul all year long. And I don't think that's like hard for any of us to, understand. It's not a stretch. But I know friend one of my best friends used to live in Dallas. Now she lives here in Colorado, but she goes on a girls trip multiple times a year with her Dallas friends. And I've always joke with her all the time of like, you're cheating on me with your Dallas friends. But suffice it to say, we get it. We get that there's something really valuable about that. And when someone says that they go, like, for example, on this trip to Sedona every year, or something like that with their close friends, we are so happy for them. We're like, good for you. You should do that. Don't give that up. Never, never give that up. But then it comes to something like a retreat, or maybe like something that's about like an investment in our soul, that's more of a specifically, the friends trip might not be, specifically set up to be like soul investment opportunity. But something like a retreat, usually it is set up that way, right there, right? And when it comes to something like this, we rake ourselves over the coals. Like, I can't justify going on a retreat, or like it's bougie or something like that. When you think about it, it doesn't make any sense. Like, a the friend trips and stuff we go on, usually they have like exactly zero quote unquote self work built in. And B, we still know when we've gone on these trips that it was extremely important for our like well-being. It really feeds us. And we still go. Like, it doesn't need to have the transformation built into it in an official way for us to know that it's worth it. And then now there's this thing like a retreat, or like something else that, maybe has this value to it, that does have transformation built in. And plus, when in the case of the retreat, it's less money than most vacations, and it's just as fun, just as soul feeding, and we talk ourselves out of it. And why do we do that? Honestly, this is why I said this is something I'm musing about. Like, I don't know why we do that. Probably if I did know, I'd be way better at marketing my retreat. But it doesn't matter that I don't know. Like, I don't have to crack the code of like why we say yes to something that's quote unquote indulgent, but no to stuff that's like clearly this like wise choice. I don't have to understand why we do that to understand the feeling of doing it, because I've done it too. And I was like thinking of examples of like times in my life where I have, done said no to something, and then later on been like, what was I thinking? That made no sense. Or said yes to something at the same time saying no to something else. And when you compare and contrast the two things, it makes no logical sense why I've done that. And it totally has happened for like really important things. Like, I mean, this is a serious example, but a lot of you already know my eldest son went through a year and a half of residential treatment when he was in high school. And we tried to fight that for so long. And I spent so much money. And one of the reasons why I spent so much money trying to help him not have to go away, no, don't get me wrong, the major reason why I didn't want to have to go down that road with him is because sending your child away, it feels awful. It feels finite, and it's scary because you just don't know. Well, first of all, is this thing going to work? And second of all, is this going to ruin our relationship? But I will tell you, almost equally motivating to try to avoid that was how expensive treatment is so freaking expensive. And so I wanted to avoid that at all costs. And I spent like a year, probably as much time as he was in treatment, I spent beforehand trying to keep him out of treatment. And so much money too, not just time. And in the end, it just wound up costing us like 3 times as much money and twice as much time, because I kept saying no when multiple practitioners were recommending that this kid go away. Now, that's a really serious example where it's like, why did I do that? Like, why did I say no to that? It doesn't make any logical sense, especially since in the end, when I look back on it, the very people who told us he needed to go ended up being so right. And we wound up like just relying on them so much for support and guidance. And I just can't believe how long I spent just not taking their advice. And they wound up being like practically my guru by the end of the experience. So so whatever, that's a really serious example, but I will say I made up this expression a while ago for my own behavior when it comes to shopping, which have you ever heard the expression buyer's remorse? Like, you buy something and later on you're like, what was I thinking? Why did I get this thing? Or oh my God, that was such a waste of money or something like that. I tend to have the opposite, which is like, I don't know what the word for that would be, like saver's remorse or like opportunity remorse or something like that. But that's my biggest pitfall when it comes to shopping. And I can think of like specific times where like I tried on this dress or this jacket or some outfit where I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. And then I talked myself out of it because it was too expensive or because it wasn't exactly perfect. Like, actually, as I'm talking, I'm thinking specifically, I was in this vintage shop in Fort Collins last year. I tried on this super cute, and if anyone of you knows me, my favorite color is orange. I just love like sort of like a hippie boho orangey brownie like earth tony stuff that's still kind of funky. And I tried on this hoodie that was orange with like little green flowers all over it. It was whatever. It was like it wasn't even that much money. I think it was like 30 bucks or something like that. But I tried it on. I thought it was adorable. It was totally me. And then I don't know what I was thinking. I just talked myself out of it, or I was just like, oh, it's a little bit frayed on the, on the cuffs because it was, vintage. In the zipper, maybe the zipper wasn't perfect or something. I don't even remember the reason. So, oh, I remember the main reason was the zipper was silver, and I usually tend to wear gold, and I don't wear a whole lot of silver, and that's it. And I thought, I mean, here I am a year later talking about this stupid hoodie. Like, I should have bought it. And so those kinds of things. And then I started thinking about stories of like other friends. Like, I have a really dear friend who happens to live in Fort Collins, coincidentally, who she talks. I have known her for almost 20 years now. And I have heard her for 20 years talk about when she was young and just newly married. So, money was tight and all of that stuff. She got invited to this like once in a lifetime thing where someone she knew somehow had connections to the environmental like nature preserve in the Galapagos. And so they were actually able to do their wedding in the Galapagos. And because it was in the Galapagos, it was like a super, super small guest list. You can't just be having some sort of big bash blowout in the Galapagos. You have to like mind the turtles and stuff like that. And so she made the cut. Like, she was invited to go to this Galapagos wedding. And because the family of the couple was hosting everything, all they would have had to do was pay for their plane tickets. And then they would have had this like once in a lifetime, never before seen or probably ever again to occur experience in the Galapagos Islands. And she said no, because she was looking, with her like blinders on that we often have when money feels tight, of like, no, it's not smart, it's not responsible, blah, blah, blah. This chick, like I said, 20-year long friendship. I've heard about the Galapagos at least once a year ever since I've met this girl. It was a mistake. She wishes she has abstainer's remorse. And the last example I was thinking of when I was trying to like kind of explore these ideas, it comes circles back to my retreat, because like 2 years ago, I was looking for a yoga instructor. When I first started running the retreat, we had like morning activities, but they were more like a centering activity or like a mindset or mindfulness activity. And people requested to do yoga in the mornings, which makes perfect sense. I don't teach yoga, and I'm not really like a yogi. So, but I knew a couple of my clients also were yoga instructors. And there was one person who I really, well, I thought she was a great candidate for the retreat anyway. And so I reached out to her and I said, what if you came on the retreat and you were the yoga instructor in the mornings? And for that, I would just only charge you my overhead. Like, you wouldn't actually have to pay to come. You essentially would be coming on the retreat for free and just paying for like the food and my overhead. And she was like, oh, but you know what, still would cost me some money, because I have to fly there and blah blah blah. And I was like, yeah, but you know what, it would be in a business expense because it's for this yoga gig. And you could also be, a lot of the people who come on my retreat are from Denver and you're from Denver. So maybe it would also be a way for people to connect with you. And she said no, ultimately. And then the next year she wanted to come on the retreat, which was awesome. I mean, it wasn't like I was upset with her or anything like that. It was great. She decided that she didn't want to do it. And, And then the next year she did come, but I had already found a yoga instructor. So she said no this year, where she probably would have only paid a couple $100 to come. And then the next year she realized that she really did want to come, and she wound up having to pay full price, which is, it was completely fine. It's not like, oh no, it's terrible or anything like that. But it's these illogical or um sort of like, we sort of get this like myopic blinders on, and then once we are not in the moment anymore and we're able to zoom out, we see the big picture, and we're kind of like, oh, what was I thinking? And I really like, that is as far as I've gotten in sort of unpacking this idea of like, why do we do that? I think it really is the zoom out zoom in thing. Like when we are just like narrow focused, we're like in this sort of narrow mindset. We have the blinders on. We're just zoomed in on whatever cost, for example, or I can only go on one trip a year. So I've already picked this trip, so I can't go on that trip. Or I already have a hoodie at home. So, and I usually only wear gold jewelry. So I guess I can't have this like sweatshirt that it makes my heart sing or whatever. It's that myopic sort of like narrow mindedness. Then later on, when we're not in the moment, we're not quote unquote under the gun about making the decision, we zoom out and we're just like, oh my gosh, I missed a going to the Galapagos. What was I thinking? And so I think maybe it's the zoom out, zoom in thing. That's my working theory right now. I would love to hear from you what you think. But I also encourage you to just think about, where is something in your life where you have those blinders on, and how would you see this situation or this quote unquote dilemma if you were able to zoom out? And maybe that thing that you're zooming out and zooming in on is the retreat, but it might be something else. There's something in our lives that always, I would imagine, that we are looking at in a way that is totally nearsighted. Let's put it that way. Nearsighted. Yeah, I like that. And if we were able to zoom out and look at the big picture, we would see it completely differently than we're seeing it right now. And, if the thing that you are being nearsighted about is the retreat, I just want you to feel heard and seen. Like, I get it. We're all doing this all of the time. It's hard to make sometimes these kinds of decisions when we are nearsighted about it, and it's hard to remember to zoom out and have that bigger objectivity. But basically, I get it. Like, I know that so many people think they can't take justify taking whatever 4 or 5 days for themselves for a retreat, for example. But when it comes to the retreat specifically, in my opinion, doing something like this is not actually optional, because the kinds of results that you get from something like this, you can't get anywhere else. Like, you can't get the same thing from I don't know, weekly therapy sessions or weekly coaching sessions. Even with me, the world's most fabulous coach on the planet, I can't deliver to you in the traditional coaching milieu the same thing I can deliver to you in a more immersive retreat experience. And that's kind of what I feel like is so special and makes it not just justifiable, but almost like essential to do this kind of work. Like, for example, if you've ever done a coaching session or a therapy session or even just gotten a massage or something, and it like ends right when it was finally getting somewhere, like, but I happens to me all the time with my therapist, where like it's like, oh, our time is up, and I'm like, but I just had a breakthrough, or whatever. The immersion of coming on something like this, that takes that out of the equation. Like, you don't have to like quit mid breakthrough. You get to actually see that through, and you don't have to do it all at once. And actually, you get so much more out of doing something where you kind of dip your toe in the water and get some food for thought. And then we go to lunch. And while you're at lunch, you're sort of not just chewing on your food, but chewing on this new idea that you've thought of. And then later on that afternoon, maybe we'll go for a hike and you ask me about it. And now we get to talk about it in a different way. Like, you wind up having more transformation in a shorter amount of time, actually, because of that immersion quality that you just can't get any other way. I think also coming on something like this, it's a really interesting combination. You know, that the girls trip, a vacation, that's really an amazing, beautiful escape, which is wonderful. And, you know, when you go to like something like a workshop or an intensive or a class or something, that's great too. And it's work. Going on a retreat is kind of like neither and both at the same time, because you, just like I said, just learning and growth are happening alongside fun and relaxation. And those two things, like kind of pendulating between the two things and merging those two things, allows for so much deeper transformation and enhancement of everything. Like the fun and relaxation even is enhanced because it feels like there's some sort of purpose and clarity going along with that. So that sort of combination, once again, you can't get that any other way, you know? And the other thing is that the impact that lasts forever. So when we're doing like work throughout the year, my clients and I, we have these little mini breakthroughs. It's a chipper, right? We're chipping away at it throughout the year. A retreat is something that's basically like this major shot in the arm that you are using all year long. Just like my brother-in-law, who's like, he's really not, I don't want to say coasting, but he's living on the magic of his time with his friends and on this his little guys retreat every year, all year long. And that's so true, even more deeply at something like this, especially when we're talking about parenting and things like that. You come home, you're implementing all of this stuff in your relationships, with your partner, at work, with friends, like just in your relationship with yourself. Like it's so profound and lasting. And the other thing that I think is really special about a retreat that you can't get anywhere else is the fact that we get to do lots of different kinds of things. So y'all know that I do the Enneagram work and I do internal family systems work, and I can do all of that in a coaching session, and that's awesome. And I can tell you, after being a coach since 2017, the more tools I have in my toolkit, the more enhanced and multifaceted the coaching that I offer in regular coaching sessions has become. And it's takes that to a whole nother level when you're in person and in that immersive experience over several days. We get to do movement things, we take time in nature, we spend time doing like deep guided meditation. Our meals and our music even are part of that sort of big picture, that environment. So, you know, it's just this multi-sensory experience that you simply just cannot get in a traditional, you know, have a session here, see you in 2 weeks kind of setup. So, you know, I just think that um understanding, you know, the results that you get from the retreat, you can't get any other way. And that it might be worth it for you to recognize that you are being nearsighted. Maybe you are being nearsighted about the retreat, and to give yourself permission to zoom out and start to realize like, this is not indulgent. It's not bougie. It's not just a fun thing. And yet it is. And both of those things are important and you deserve them. Not only do you deserve them, you simply cannot get where you want to go without them. And so, if that feels true to you, if this is speaking to your soul, if you also regret not buying an orange hoodie last year, this might be your message from the universe that this is your year to come with me on the retreat. The theme this year is connection. We're talking all about our relationship with ourselves and then expanding that. And if you've come on the retreat, you know how I do that, where I kind of start with these core fundamentals on day one, and then we like open that up and expand that to bigger and bigger sort of circles around ourselves. So it's going to be our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with our kids, our relationships with our close family, all the way out until our relationship with the rest of the world. We're going to be using the Enneagram, obviously, because I can't go 24 hours without saying the word Enneagram. But then also this year, I'm weaving in something new, which is the anatomy of peace, which I find to be extremely impactful when it comes to relationships and relating and connections and communications. And if you've ever done my Words That Work workshop, you might see a few little tendrils from that sprinkled in as well. And also that workshop is really also inspired by the Anatomy of Peace. So you can see it all kind of weaving together. So think about connecting with yourself and therefore or thereby being able to enhance your connections with everyone else in your life. And think about doing that through the medium of the retreat. And I will talk to you all again next week and leave you with just that question. Where are you being nearsighted and where would you want to zoom out and see things through a new lens? Bye, everybody. The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.